So we'll start. Thank you everyone for joining us for today's C2M2 Cyber Physical Systems Frontier series. In our today's webinar, we have among us our C2M2 superstar Fengjiao Zhao. She is also a very good friend of mine, and she is a PhD candidate majoring in transportation system at Clemson University. Fengjiao's research interest is using virtual reality and statistical models to conduct human factor studies, especially in the context of autonomous driving. Fengjiao is also actively involved in multiple C2M2 funded research projects. Among them, a few are like assessment of contextual complexity and risk using unsupervised clustering approaches with dynamic traffic condition. And then another one is the potential reduction of fatal crashes in South Carolina due to connected and automated vehicles. She also served as a president of our IEEE ITS student chapter at Clemson University, and she was awarded the Outstanding Student Leadership Award by our center, C2M2. Clemson University awarded her the R.C. Edwards Outstanding Graduate Student for her scholarly achievements and leadership in student organization. So we are very excited to hear from Fengjiao today. And during the talk, if you have any question, you can write down the question in the chat box, or at the end, we'll have a question and answer session when you can unmute yourself and ask the question directly to Fengjiao. So Fengjiao, the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ken. Okay, let me go share my screen.
Yes, we can see that.
Can you see,
yes,
can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. It's okay. It has no notes and everything. It's all good, right? So
it has,
yeah, I can see perfect. Yes, thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Fengjiao, PhD candidate in transportation systems at Clemson University. It's really my honor to be here today. Thank you, Dr. Chaudhary, for inviting me, and thank you, Dr. King, and then Leomi at C2M2 for organizing today's meeting. So it's I have been away from Clemson for a while, but it just feels great today to see like family members. And today my talk is about the design of an effective virtual reality environment to study pedestrians' mid-block crossing behavior on the multi-lane road when interacting with autonomous vehicles. So first, some background. From 2014 to 2018, pedestrian fatalities has increased by 28%. And then for just in 2018, we have more than 6,000 pedestrians died, nearly 75,000 pedestrians were injured. And for those crashes, most of them are happen in urban areas, and then 73% happen at mid-block locations. So those are challenging conditions for human drivers. And then this is a very old study. I look at all the crash contributing factors. And then it's found that 90 drivers were, or human factors were related to 93% of those motor vehicle crashes. So it would be very helpful if the driver is out, so it could possibly save some of those lives. That's what autonomous vehicle is doing. So AVs could potentially eliminate crashes caused by human errors and benefit the transportation system, especially the level 4 and 5 for autonomous vehicles. But AVs will also face challenges in the future. And one of the concerns regarding replacing human drivers with autonomous control system is the social interaction void with road users, especially with pedestrians. And then we have some researchers that indicate that AVs, if they are programmed to always yield to the pedestrian in any risky situations they sense, even at like mid-block locations when they jaywalk. So then as a result, pedestrians will learn that they can cross the road anytime, anywhere to force the risk-averse AVs to stop or slow down. So therefore, we think it's very important to understand those pedestrian behavior response under various operational AV algorithms. So we want to look at some related work for pedestrian behavior. This is a literature review. They summarized all the classical studies for pedestrian behavior and also the pedestrian behavior under AVs. So by say classical, I mean those interacting with human driving vehicles. And you can see most of those studies were with human driving vehicles. So very limited study were about autonomous vehicle driving. And then we can see here the most studied factors for under autonomous driving are communication, or here intent display. For the papers I reviewed, so most of those studies, they focused on what types of intent display is more helpful, like it's audio or it's video or some other types of display. But not many studies look at the behavior of autonomous vehicles, and then also like the physical context, which is heavily studied by classical studies. But with autonomous vehicles, you can see here, it's very rare. It's very rarely studied, like number of lanes or the lane width or different roadway types. So that's why we're having this study here. And then this is another literature review showing all the data collection method for pedestrian behavior. As you can see here, like the most of those methods are like using questionnaire or here using interview, because building AV prototypes is pretty expensive, and also there are significant danger exists when testing actual pedestrian response. However, like recently, virtual reality, which shows here is the simulation here, which is VR, so it has become a more reliable and safe tool to study pedestrian behavior. And this is another literature review summarized 87 papers during the past 10 plus years for all the pedestrian behavior using VR. And you can see from 2015, there has been an increase of observable pedestrian behavior studies, which was likely to be attributed to new technologies, such as like cave automatic virtual environment or head-mounted display HMDs that can enable actual pedestrian walking. However, we reviewed all those VR, those papers, and then found that there are two limitations for those past studies. One of them is the simulator sickness. One study we found they have 15% of participants withdrew from the study because of the simulator sickness. And then also for those who remained in the study, they had significant sickness symptoms after 25 minutes of immersed in the VR. Another limitation is the walking distance limitation. Because of the infrared sensor tracking ability, most of those, we found the navigational tasks that require more than 30 feet of walking were usually conducted with additional devices like using treadmills or joysticks, so which will reduce the immersion. So those are the limitations we found for past studies. And here we summarized for pedestrian behavior under AV in VR. So we summarized using more than 30 papers for all the pedestrian behavior interacting with AV in virtual reality. So we summarized by two factors. One is the roadway infrastructure and then traffic factors. Another is the vehicle factors. So for roadway infrastructure and the traffic factors, we found all those more than 30 studies were conducted in urban road environment. But the majority of them, they use two-lane roads. None of them studied multi-lane roads. Part of the reason, as I mentioned, is because they need naturalistic walking more than 30 feet. They need extra devices. And also some of them, they did not use extra devices. They just asked the participants to like answer a questionnaire, to give them an answer, would you cross or would you not cross? Or do a crossing decision with controller buttons without really do the walking. Yeah, this is one of the limitations. Also, most of the studies were conducted on mid-block locations, same with us. and more than 90% of them involved only one vehicle to one pedestrian interaction. Also, more than 80% of them are on one-way street. So those are some of the research gap we're trying to fill, is to address some of those gaps here. Like, for example, we have multi-lane roads, we have naturalistic walking for more than 30 feet, and we involve more than one pedestrian to one vehicle interaction. And another factor is the vehicle factor. So for all those more than 30 papers we reviewed, we found most of those studies, they focus on external human-machine interface, which is the same as I mentioned before, like the communication or the intent display. For some of them, they have AV driving behavior design included, but not a lot of them. And also we found lots of the studies, they design the vehicle behavior to be simple, like always yield to the pedestrian, slow down, and then the pedestrian can cross the road. So we also found only one study has allowed real-time back and forth interaction with pedestrian. Most of the others, as I mentioned, it's a very simple behavior in VR, either just stop or slow down, those types of behavior. So, and that's what we're trying to address in our research. So to conclude, the contribution of this research is, one, we designed an effective VR environment that does not rely on artificial locomotion and allows pedestrians to have naturalistic walking of free movement, leading to negligible or minimal sickness symptoms. Two, we design AVs with real-time back and forth negotiation behavior, and pedestrian can interact with multiple AVs in an environment. And then last is we study the impact of different roadway types and multi-lane roadway types on pedestrian behavior. So the next we'll look at our experiment design using VR. One is we designed, as I mentioned, we designed it's multi-lane. So we need a bigger space. Here we choose the room to be 76 feet long and then 48 feet wide. And then we designed a VR here. The dash line here shows the VR environment. That's pedestrians were able to cross the road for like 63 feet. And then they can walk. The walking distance can be 30 feet long, 30 feet wide. So we were very careful when designing the environment because we don't want the pedestrians to hit the wall when they are doing the experiment. And we used Oculus Quest 2 in our study. It's a completely wireless all-in-one VR headset in this study. And then also worth noting is we turned off the guardian boundaries, which were designed for protecting the players from hitting the wall. So we turn it off to let pedestrians be able to walk 5 lanes in our study. And then another thing is at the very beginning, we used Oculus Quest 1 for the pilot test and development and everything. But we did find the tracking loss was a major issue during the pilot tests in a very large experiment test room, because usually they don't turn off the guardian boundaries, but we did. So that was one of the issues we had at the very beginning. We tried many different ways, like printing pictures, different shapes, different colors to put on the floor, on the wall, to help with this tracking issue. But we couldn't solve the issue. And then we tried the different types of equipment. So Oculus Quest 2, they did eliminate those tracking problems. So anyone here, if you want to use those equipment for future VR study, you can always talk to me. So I spent like near 1 month trying to solve this glitch issue. Yeah, if you are interested, you can let me know so I can help solve those issues. The next is the experiment procedure. So our procedure is survey, and then VR training, and then VR experiment, and then survey. We you can see from here, we start with like consent form and then doing some of the demographic and other surveys. And then we started training. So this is a very important thing, training in our study design. We want a pedestrian to understand what the different AV signals means. So we want to give them a training. So they did a task. I will explain later what the task was without AV, and then observed AV without a task, and then they did a task again with AV but no signal. And then the last, we were teaching them what different signals means. Like we have yellow and red and blue signals, what those signals means. And then we ask pedestrians to come to the first lane to interact with the autonomous vehicle until they understand all those signals. And we also give them a quiz at the end, and if they answer the quiz wrong, so we will correct them and explain to them again until they understand this. So I think this is very important for them to understand what those design means, and then their behavior will reflect their real behavior because they know what they're doing. And then the next very important thing is we designed a two-factor within subject design. We had a two-factor within subject design. So the two factors are the roadway sync is one of the factor, and another is the AV signal. So the roadway sync, we have three types. I will show the pictures later. One is a 4-lane, one is a 4-lane with a median, and a 4-lane with a 2 left lane. And then another is the AV signal. We have three types. I will show as well. So this is the overall flow for this study. And then the next is the roadway sync, as I mentioned. So we have a 4-lane, we have a 2 left lane, and we have a median. So seen in our design. All of them are designed for 11 feet each. So 4-lane thing here is 44 feet in total, and then 2 left lane is 55 feet in total, and then the median is also 55. The next I will explain is our AV behavioral and signal. So as I mentioned, we have three different types of signal scenarios in our study. So the first one is called no signal. The second is Y signal. The last is the YB signal. So we want to design AV that not always yield to pedestrians. So we want to have some types of negotiation with the pedestrian, because this is jaywalking, it's a midblock. And then for the no signal is and in the yellow signal, the no and Y, they have this exact same AV behavior. They have negotiation algorithm. I will explain later. But it's just the no signal is just turn off all the signals, not going to show their communication, but the Y signal will show the communication. And then the last one is we introduce a third AV behavior or a signal scenario. It's called YB. We added a platoon of non-stopping AVs showing blue signal to add to the Y signal scenario. So those are the three signal types. And I'll keep repeating this during this presentation to remind everyone. So next I will explain what is the negotiation algorithm looks like, the behavior for the Y signal. Here is the algorithm. So once a pedestrian, they wear the headset. So if the pedestrian is detected by the AV in a VR environment, then they'll check if there is a trajectory conflict. If yes, then the vehicle will start showing the yellow signal, meaning that I see you, I want to negotiate with you. And then we design a conflict box, which is shown here. So the conflict box here is designed the same width of the AV along the path of pedestrian travel at each lane. So only the pedestrian here, it reaches the conflict box, advisory reduced AV speed will give to the AV to net pedestrian pass. And then those small green squares at the two sides, those are the intention box we designed. As long as pedestrian reach to this intention box, we give the vehicle a signal, a message that the pedestrian has the intention to cross the road, so the negotiation will start. And then after the pedestrian passed the conflict box, the vehicle will speed up and continue the simulation. So we designed the speed limit as 20 mph in our study. It's a consideration of the visibility of the signals from the VR headset and also the comfort level of pedestrian crossing. And you can also see here, we have a red here, the red signal. This is a warning signal. If the AV distance to the conflict box is less than the stopping sight distance, then we will show red signals giving the pedestrian, hey, we don't have enough time to stop, so you should not cross. So this is the flow for the Y signal scenario. And this is the last one is the YB. So the Y signal, the yellow are still the same behavior, but we just added the platoon here. So a platoon of those non-stopping AVs showing blue signal added to the Y signal. It means it's a more aggressive AV behavior we designed here. It's like a concept we designed for traffic operation considerations to benefit the whole traffic system and increase efficiency. So you can see in the figure here, after a platoon of AV, the non-stopping AVs, there will be vehicles coming, showing yellow signals, and then negotiating with the pedestrian. So the YB, this whole YB scenario, we were designed to study how pedestrian will react differently compared to the Y signal, and also we're curious to see if people cross in front of those blue or not, or they wait for yellow, or if they do, who are those people and who will wait. So those are some of our questions. The next is the gap design. So the gap between AVs is also crucial to the experiment. We want to design some gap not be accepted or rejected by everyone. So we have study, we look at literature that shows for mid-block crossing, no one crossed below 3 seconds, and then all cross over 6 seconds. Some say 7, some say 8 seconds. It really depends on where those studies were conducted, and the number of lanes, and then the lane width. So for us, we did pilot test for gap between 3 to 6 seconds, and we had people with different age groups. They come and then do the test, and then we ultimately adopted 4.5 seconds for the first lane, and then 3.5 seconds gap for the third lane as the gap. And another thing is we found that near sight gap is considered based on literature. So they say near sight gap is considered the critical gap when pedestrians cross at mid-block locations. So that's why we designed the far side gap to be 15 seconds in our study to not affect pedestrians interacting with AVs in the first lane. So this is the gap design. The next is the pedestrian task. This is one of the also very important design we had in our study. So our pedestrian task is here. They start from here. We tell them off at the training. We say this: you start from your home, and then you cross the road to the other side of the road to pick up food, in a restaurant to pick up the food. So they were on the mid-block, across the mid-block location because there was no closed crosswalk present. And then we also designed, here is a near 20 feet of sidewalk for the pedestrians to walk and then turn around. So this will give them a more realistic scenario. It's like they're really walking on the road, but not just like some other studies. They're just standing there and waiting for AVs, which will not be very real. And then another thing is every time we automatically generate new scenarios. So every time the pedestrian, they go cross the road, they pick up the food, and they come back home here. And then as long as they come back home, there will be a new, like this is the new scenario will automatically be generated to them. So this is what they will see at the starting point here. There will be a screen. Every time they come back, it's going to automatically be generate the next randomized scenario for them. So then in this case, they can do multiple crossings, like 3 by 3, they can do 9 crossings without we explain to them anything or give them instructions. So it's going to help with their immersion. And this help pedestrian task design is to help them immerse in an environment without thinking about what the research team is collecting, what data they're collecting. So that's the whole purpose. Okay, those are all for the design. The next I'm going to talk about how when we collect the data, how we collect the data. So we had 50 participants. Most of other studies like we saw are around 30 participants. So we are in a pretty good number. And then we conducted the study in spring 2022 at Clemson, and I think a lot of students here today also helped with this data collection. I really appreciate that. And the study was around 1 hour when no one dropped the experiment. So that's very good. And here is a picture showing what the study looks like when we're collecting the data. Again, here is the screen, as I mentioned, as a home. So they have instructions from here, and then they come here to wait. Same as here, they're waiting at the curb. Here, waiting at curb, and then they cross the road, and then come here in the middle. This one, they're waiting, and then they cross to pick up their food, and then they come back home to this starting point again. It's, as I mentioned, it's going to be another scenario we'll generate for them. And then we had 48 participants completed all 27 trials, but unfortunately we had 2 missing trials. Is because the headset and batteries were dead. So if anyone here wants to do similar studies, I highly recommend to have enough gap between 2 participants to prevent this to happen. So in total, we had 1,332 trials were used in this analysis. So data collected include survey-based responses and also VR simulator-based pedestrian behavior data. Like each lane, we have 4 lanes. Each lane's AV speed, position, what is the vehicle number interacting with the pedestrian, and then the AV signal, and then the time gap to the pedestrian. And then we also record the pedestrian's behavior using the headset, like the pedestrian's position, speed, and then their head rotation. And some of them were not used in today's analysis, but we'll use them in future analysis. The next, I will talk about the variables. So all the variables in today's modeling, I will talk about them. So the first one is the AV signals. As I mentioned before, we have 3 different signal types, right? One is a no signal scenario, Y, and then one is a YB. So this here, the table shows is 4 variables. So we have 3 scenarios, but 4 variables. So this is the first scenario, no signal. This is the second, Y signal. And the last 2 are the YB. So the reason we separate them is to distinguish between the yellow signal in the Y and then the yellow signal in the YB. So that's why we have 4 signal types for the modeling. So it's like for this data analysis, we choose the time step that the pedestrian started crossing the road. So that's why for that time step, we choose to cross the road. The signal will be just one signal, right? Either will be blue or it will be yellow. So that's why we separate them. Looks like this for data. Again, no signal means no signal, but has a negotiation behavior like the YY. But YY just shows the yellow signal. And then the YYB, it means it's the yellow signal in this negotiation or no yield platoon, and then the BYB is the blue signal in this negotiation or no yield platoon scenario. So those are the 4. We'll talk a lot later for those 4 variables. How do the behavior changes when they cross at different signals, in front of different signals. And the next one is all the variables we use in this analysis. So we're trying to understand the effect of AV signals and roadway types on pedestrians' behavior. So we examine here for the response variables, we use the accepted gap, and then their walking behavior, walking time, and then their waiting time at the curb. And then also for this study, although we collected round trip, multiple lanes and data, but for this analysis for today, I'm only use the first lane. So their waiting time is waiting at the curb, walking time is walking time for the first lane, and then the accepted gap is also they're observing at the curb for the first lane. Those other signals I already mentioned, and then seeing we have 4 lane median to a left lane. And age, we merged the 40 to 49, 50 to 59 because this one only have 1 people. So we merged them. So now we have 4 groups for the age and gender, and we also include the block to see how do their behavior change with time. Sickness is also included here because we want to see if sickness affect their pedestrians crossing behavior in our study. As I mentioned, but this is a statistic model. As I mentioned before, each participant, they had 27 crossings. So the response variables are measured repeatedly within the same participant. And that's why to account for the correlation between a response variable within the same participant, we used a linear mixed model here. Okay, next I will talk about the results. So we're going to talk about 3 parts. One is the simulator sickness questionnaire. Another is the pedestrian behavior for the modeling, and the last part I want to show everyone some figures, like who crossed in front of those blue signals. Okay, this is the first one, simulator sickness questionnaire. We collected the simulator sickness after the training and then after each of the 3 blocks. So this is what the questionnaire looks like. The participant, they reported 0 or 1 or 2 to each of those 16 sickness symptoms. So we had here is 0 or 1 or 2 or 3. This is how we collected the data. And then how to calculate and the sickness score. So I just want to show you in case anyone here wants to do those types of studies. And then almost everyone all the studies I saw, they use this questionnaire. So I think it will be helpful to bring this to the audience. And then this is how you calculate the score for SSQ. You can do it by group them to different, like nausea, disorientation. You can group those 16 questions to those groups and calculate score for each of them. But for this, for our study, we only just care about the total scores. So we just group them and then we just add them together and multiply 3.74. So this will give us the total SSQ score, and then we can compare with other studies. And this is the results for all our simulator sickness questionnaire. We can see, let's show this table. It shows what does those sickness score means. So if it's less than 5, it means it's negligible symptoms, which is really good. 5 to 10 is minimal symptoms. 10 to 15 is significant symptoms. So for our study, when we saw the score, we were very excited because this means until the last block, so all our participants had like stayed in the negligible symptoms. So they have very little sickness in our experiment. And that's near 30 minutes in our study. And once they get to the last block here, so it's 9, it's still within the minimal symptoms, the sickness symptoms in our study. And that's already close to like a 40 minutes. So we think this is likely to be attributed to our use of a large room where allow participants to walk naturally rather than using any artificial forms of locomotion like we commonly used before. So when the long distance walking was needed. And this is a comparison to a recent study in 2017, as I mentioned in the literature. So for their study, you can see after 5 minutes, still within 5, so negligible symptoms, and then but after 5 to 15 minutes, it started to be between 5 to 10, so it's minimal symptoms, and then after 25 minutes, it started to be very significant symptoms. So we do think our study has very small amount of very little sickness. So we do think this study limited potential for sickness, and it's a good design. It's a good pedestrian VR simulator design. Okay, those are for the simulator sickness. The next part we will look at is the pedestrian behavior. So the pedestrian behavior, and this is the overall table. We have, as I mentioned, the accepted gap, walking time, and then the waiting time here. So overall, I will show those tables later separately, but now I just want to give a overall view of this, the modeling results. So we can see here all the signals here affect all the pedestrian behavior, like gap, waiting time, and walking time. But like seeing they affect some of the behavior, also age, some of the behavior, but for like gender, they did not affect any of those behavior in my study. And then sickness here, it's good that we found sickness does not affect any pedestrian crossing behavior in our studies. And then next, I will show them one by one what's the findings we have for different pedestrian behaviors. The first one is the accepted gap. We can see the significant explanatory variables associated with accepted gap are here, the signal no, and then the signal YYB. And then if you forgot, this is the annotation here shows what those different signals mean. And then they are all compared with the base signal. In this case, in the modeling, it sets the BYB as the base. So every of those compare with the BYB. So those are the only thing significant for accepted gap. All the others were not. And then we can see for accepted gap size, those estimates were all positive. So meaning for those signal no and signal YYB, they accepted a larger gaps compared to BYB. This is for accepted gap. And I'll explain more in the conclusion for why does those happen. And then the next is the walking time. This one we have more factors that are significant. For example, we have YYB. Those are all positive estimates compared to BYB. So meaning that for YY and YYB, their walking time are longer, so they walk slower compared to BYB. So which makes sense because they're crossing in front of yellow signals, which are a little bit more conservative compared to the blue signals. So they are more comfortable walking slowly. And also for median two-way left lane. So this is something which we found very interesting because we were expecting median two-way left lane to pedestrians to walk slow as well because they maybe feel safer. But we found that for median and two-way left lane, they have shorter walking time. So it means four lane they were walking slowly. Yeah, we will explain later why does this happen, but this is one thing we found very interesting. And then the last is the block trial. So we found that trial block increases 1 unit, their walking time increases 0.081 seconds. So meaning they're walking more and more slowly with time going. This is for walking time. Last one is for waiting time. So waiting time will also have more significant variables, as we can see here. No signal is significant, and the YYB compared to the BYB. So meaning that for no signal and YYB, because of the positive estimates here, so that means they waited longer compared to the BYB scenario. And for the SIN, this is the negative estimates here shows for median two-way left lane, they waited less because they can't go to the middle to wait and interact for the other side of the road, the vehicles. So that's why they waited less compared to four lane. And then also age is also significant here. So it shows you can see those positive estimates here. It means for age group, older age group, they waited much longer compared to the baseline is the 18 to 29 age group. Those are the findings for the behaviors. So the next one I want to show is the pairwise comparison for all the signals. As I mentioned, the pedestrian behavior, so the signals affect all their behaviors. So I want to, but the past just shows 3 comparisons with the baseline. So here I want to show all the different comparisons here. And the first 3 were already explained before, so I want to focus on the last 3 rows here. First, I want to explain is the note 4 here, compare the no signal and YY. It's one with same behavior, but one with communication, one not. So this means that compared to YY, no signal has larger gap, and then they have shorter waiting time, and they waited longer in the no signal scenario. So it means the communication helps. And then the last one here, it shows compared to YYB, YY, even it's same yellow signal, same negotiation behavior, but they're in different traffic scenarios. So in YY, they accept a smaller gap, walk slower, and waited less, so they're more comfortable in this YY scenario. And then some other findings include like the largest accepted gap was no signal, most conservative, and the longest walking time was YY and most comfortable, and then the shortest waking time or BYB and no signal. Either they're not secure or they feel unsure. So those are all the behavior results we found using the mixed linear regression model. And then the next one I want to show is the last of my results. I want to show, as so many people cross in front of those blue signals, like who are those people? And then what are those road type infrastructure they're more likely to do this? So the first one is who crossed in front of blue. So in this case, we just used the YB, not all the data, we used just the YB scenario data. So you choose cross in front of yellow or cross in front of blue. So we want to see what those data looks like. So this is a figure showing by age, cross in front of different signals by age. And you can see here, and the blue is crossing in front of blue and the yellow is crossing in front of yellow. So you can see here with age increasing, it did show the trend that there's less and less people crossing in front of blue signals. So we also did a statistic test. All those 4 groups, they are significantly different from each other. And for example, we compared age 60 with age 18 to 29, and we found that for age 18 to 29, they're like 7 times more likely to cross in front of blue signals compared to age 60. So our conclusion is that with age increasing, the likelihood of choosing to cross in front of those more aggressive behavior vehicles, they decrease. And then this is my last discussion here for what road type they're more likely to cross in front of blue signals, if there is. And then we also did a statistic test here. And this negative, it means it's like an odds ratio. So less than 0, it means less likely to happen. So here it's only significant is the 4-lane compared to 4-lane with the median. So meaning that at median, 4-lane, they're less likely. So if we flip over, it means median, they're more likely to cross in front of blue. So because they feel the most safe or comfortable, so they like to, it's like a risk compensation. So they like to take a more risky behavior. So our conclusion is that participant at median are more likely to take risky behavior, like to cross in front of blue signals. So yeah, those are all our results. So I'm just going to draw some conclusions. And then for this study, so for roadway sync, we found that roadway sync does not affect the accepted gap. Only the signals does. So meaning that pedestrian, their observation of the impending interaction with AV, that drives the gap, not the type of roadway that they're negotiating on. Another is, but the roadway sync, they do affect the walking time and waiting time. And we found that 4-lane undivided had the longest walking time and waiting time. I explained before, so 4-lane undivided had the longest waiting time because they're looking for a gap. They're looking for gaps across all 4 lanes. So their waiting time increase because there's no stopping point for them. However, this walking time is also the longest. So we were surprised. And then our thoughts was because pedestrians, they're continuously scanning the environment and then engage in decision making. So they're walking and making decisions as well. So that's likely to slows them down, and then so they walk. They have a longer walking time. This is one thing we found interesting. And then next is median had the shortest walking time and a waiting time, which makes sense. And then also participants at median are more likely to take risky behavior to cross in front of blue signals. The next is for AV signal and behavior. This is also one of our most important design here. We found first AV behavior and signals, they do significantly affect all those pedestrian crossing behaviors. And then the difference between no and YY, this one is same behavior, but without communication for the no signal. It means AV communication help pedestrian become more confident crossing the road. And then the YY and the YYB, it's both of them are Y signal negotiation behavior, but they're in different traffic scenarios. So this means that after introducing the platoon of non-stopping AV signals with blue, non-stopping AVs with blue signals in the Y signal scenario, pedestrians, they do behave differently depend on the platoon factor or traffic factor. Also, we have more findings here for AV signals and behaviors. Like again, mentioned largest accepted gap is AV signal because of uncertain, no signal because of the uncertain AV behavior. Longest walking time is YY because they take their time walking. They know those AVs can't stop for them. Shortest walking time is BYB or the no signal because they feel either most unsafe or uncertain. And then longest waiting time is YYB because they're waiting for their blue signals to pass, for the first yellow signal to come. And then the shortest waiting time is here, the BYB, and then the YY, because this first one, it shows those pedestrians really shows aggressive, crossing behaviors for those who cross in front of blue. And then for those YY, because they trust the AV, they saw yellow signal come, they just go. So that's why it's also very short waiting time. And then we also had demographic factors, and we explored them. Gender was not significant, and age impact, waiting time, the curb, and we found older participants tend to wait longer at the curb, and the younger participants tend to more likely to cross in front of more aggressive AV behaviors. And then trial block, as we mentioned, the walking time did increase significantly with trial block because it was near 1 mile walking, so they're tired, but their decisions did not change. And also pedestrians, they make the similar decisions because the waiting time are not changing. And then the last one is the similar sickness. We do not find much sickness, which is great. And then because they're walking naturally, and then we also found sickness does not affect their behavior. So overall, conclude the study. We evaluate a VR environment designed to support naturalistic walking across multi-lane virtual road, and then its usefulness for study pedestrians' interactions with AVs. And we conclude that this VR method is immersive enough and does not include simulation sickness to the majority, making it a very useful tool to study pedestrian behavior interacting with AVs for any new types of algorithms in the future. Okay, we would also thank all our co-authors, Dr. Jennifer Vogel for study concept design, VR design, data collection and analysis interpretation, and Dr. Rob help with the VR design analysis. We really appreciate his expertise and effort with experiment procedure design. And Daniel Petty from 60 Systems with VR experiment design with Unity and multiple pilot tests, and an expert, and then Dr. Jing and Dr. Gerard with their expertise with data collection, data processing, modeling, and then data analysis and interpretation of results. And then most importantly, we also want to thank Dr. Chaudhary and then C2M2 for their support with our study. Thank you so much.
All right.
Right, 45 minutes.
Thank you so much, Fengjiao, for that wonderful presentation. And I just wanted to open up the floor for anyone who has any questions. If you'd like to send me a message in the chat and I can verbally address the question, or feel free to unmute yourself as well.
Yes, Sakib had a question here, Dr. Ken. I saw which simulation software was used for the AV simulation. We used this Unity in the study. So we designed everything from scratch using Unity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and also so when this semester when I was reviewing the TRB, one of the TRB